When I first sat down to write the script for this video, the government had been partially shut down for about a month. The only ones coming as close to being as intractable as President Trump and his demands for a border wall were Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and their insistence that there not be one. Neither party seemed willing to budge, and there didn't seem to be an end in sight. Jace the Deck Builder suggested making a video on what would happen if the government shutdown never ended. It was a great suggestion and an interesting topic, especially considering President Trump's threats to extend the shutdown indefinitely. The country had strapped itself in for the long haul. But on Friday, January 25th, a political miracle happened.
I am very proud to announce today that we have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government.
While it was relieved that the nation was no longer in financial purgatory, the good news had the unfortunate consequence of rendering virtually the entirety of my script obsolete.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
But I quickly realized that there was an equally interesting question to ask now that the whole rigmarole was done. Or, done. And that is, why did it end? I mean, on the surface, very little had changed. Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer still insisted that the wall not be built. President Trump was still tweeting about how a wall is a common sense component of an overall plan to strengthen border security and, repeatedly firing the phrase, build the wall and crime will fall.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
Shoot, the deal that the president agreed to was effectively the same one that he had rejected over a month prior. Nothing appeared to have changed. Yet the president had not only relented, he had, in a move baffling even his most ardent supporters, somehow managed to claim victory over the whole deal. So we're going to unfortunately have to put a pin in answering the question of what will happen if a government shutdown is permanent. Don't worry, I'm sure that the unceasing partisan gridlock will give us ample opportunities to revisit the question in the not too distant future. Instead, we're going to look at the reasons why the president backed down and why the government reopened. While the social sciences normally offer up a multiplicity of reasons for any given event that happens, this is one of those very few occasions where it can actually boil down to just, one thing. The president was unambiguously losing the public opinion war on the shutdown, and it was about to get a whole lot worse. Starting from December 24th through January 23rd, The Economist threw in a few questions into its weekly public opinion survey administered by YouGov. It asked a representative sample of Americans just what they thought about the shutdown. A whole bunch of other outlets did this too, but their regular intervals and consistent methodology makes it some of my favorite data on the shutdown. It gave us... Wait, how many? Shit, really? Alright. It gave us 5 weeks of consistent questions on the shutdown. I mean, shoot, it's one thing knowing cerebrally that it was the longest shutdown ever, but knowing that it was long enough to allow 5 weekly surveys, just kind of makes it that much more tangible from a research perspective. In the first wave, the largest chunk of the blame went to President Trump, probably because the wall was so visibly the thing that was driving the issue. However, very large proportions of the public felt that both the president and the Democrats in Congress were at least quote-unquote somewhat responsible for the situation. By the time we had gotten to day 35, the public was increasingly likely to think that the president was primarily responsible. It had gone from 46 to 52%. This obviously did not go uncontested by the president. On January 8th, he gave a primetime address in which he detailed the rationale for the shutdown. While some polling suggested that it gave him a brief bump and helped convince Americans that there was an urgent situation down at the southern border, it was quickly overshadowed by news detailing the difficulties faced by government workers who were furloughed or those who were forced to continue coming into work despite the fact that they weren't getting paid because they were considered essential personnel. And that's not even talking about the government contractors who aren't even guaranteed to get back pay. As is the case with most Americans, most of these people live paycheck to paycheck. Unlike most other Americans though, many of them weren't getting paid and they had no idea when they actually would. On that note, I would like to, really quick just nip the idea that this was somehow a vacation for these folk in the bud, because it unequivocally wasn't. Because while yes, it's pretty certain that most workers will get back pay eventually, good luck telling that to your landlord or to your banker or to your grocer when you have to go get food. And notice I did say most because, again, it's not at all clear whether or not government contractors are going to get back pay too. These stories continued to unfold, and as the length increased, average Americans started feeling personally affected by the shutdown too. It wasn't just national parks being closed, the government wasn't able to pay out people who desperately needed it, it wasn't able to approve craft beer, it wasn't able to produce data that people in numerous sectors of the economy really rely on. There was a lot of stuff, but I mean, honestly, I'm pretty sure it was the craft beer that did it. The president, again, tried to frame the shutdown positively, or at least in a light that was more favorable to him, by announcing a compromise that he was willing to sign. Well, he called it a compromise, but it was really just containing a bunch of stuff that the Democrats had already publicly and vehemently denied. But it did help garner positive headlines, framing the continuation of the shutdown as being in the Democrats' court. But more stories started coming out, stories about how government workers were relying on food banks and second jobs just to get by, and those came out and just totally swept away the president's compromise out of the news cycle. It was around this time that one of the first nails in the coffin came. The president's commerce secretary suggested that it should just be possible for people to get a loan instead of going to a food bank. The multi-billionaires seemed perplexed that people didn't just have, instant access to capital, like, say, a multi-billionaire would. Then, instead of making it better, President Trump said that it should be possible to just go to the grocery store and get the food there by telling the cashiers that they'll pay for said food later, almost like on a credit system. So, yeah, that didn't help much. The same day, 2 bills regarding the shutdown were voted on in the Senate, including one endorsed by the president. Both failed, but the one that was more in line with Democratic priorities actually got more votes. And I remind you, the Republicans hold the majority in the Senate. Mix that in with the fact that Speaker Pelosi successfully and very visibly rebuffed the president on the State of the Union, and it did not paint a picture of a strong and capable negotiator. About a day later, though, came what appears to be the last nail in the coffin. Numerous air traffic controllers at LaGuardia International Airport in New York and New Jersey's Newark Liberty International called out sick and caused air travel to grind to a slough. What did this have to do with the shutdown? Well, if you look closely at how many people were inclined to say that the president was most responsible, you can see that there are pretty clear and drastic differences based on partisanship. It was no secret that the president was acting with his base in mind, and they were happy to keep the shutdown going, mostly because they were less likely to be personally affected or to know someone who was. LaGuardia is one of the nation's central hubs. Delays there could easily trickle out to other airports. Not just that, but if the sick out by the air traffic controllers continued, the airport slowdowns could trickle out to the rest of the economy as well, and do so far more indiscriminately. Which means that even the president's base would start to feel the pinch, and the president needs that base to be 110% behind him if he has any hope of maintaining office in 2020. So he folded. The shutdown ended, and now we try to pick up the pieces. Now, admittedly, public opinion is one of my primary areas of research, so I acknowledge that this could very well be one of those times where it's like, if all you got's a hammer, then all you see is nails kind of thing. So if you come up with any alternative explanations while you've been watching this, or, toss them down in the comment section below. You can also put down any thoughts you have while watching this video or suggested future topics. I'm always happy to have those down there, too. I'm looking forward to reading all of them and answering a few in the next office hours. Special thanks to those supporting Professor Politics on Patreon, and like to give a shout out to research assistant Sam Dealey. Patrons get exclusive content, early content, and shout outs. So if you'd like to help out the channel, you can click the link down in the description, or at the end of the video. I really appreciate it. I remember having one commenter last week say that they would be happy to help once they get a job again. This is only if you're able to. I can totally empathize with that. So if you're able to and you'd like to be able to help out with the channel, please consider clicking that link down below and helping out. Again, it's really appreciated. Not last week because I was sick, but the week before that we talked about when even the numbers seemed to stop working in Venezuela. So let's dig into some of the responses you guys had on that. A couple of people asked what caused the downturn in Venezuela, and the very simplified version of that is that Maduro used the money that the country was getting from oil exports to fund a variety of expensive government programs and simultaneously enriching the holders of power in the regime. As long as the oil money continued to flow, things were doing good. But oil exports of Venezuela crashed when the rest of the world's demand shot down too. Not only were social services mismanaged during that entire time, but most of the economy was. When the combination of oil money drying up and economic sanctions hit, Maduro and his government sought to just continue to use that money to enrich themselves, with the rest of the population be damned. Like this. 100% this, because it's a reason why this is like some of my favorite research. I'm not as big of a fan as research that goes like there was an X% increase in this factor based on another bunch of variables that are like 8 steps removed from the processes of interest. So I really like research that actually dives into the stuff that we're interested in. Long live research interests that are aimed at tangible variables and outcomes. Finally, Tim Northrup offered a couple of good examples that the situation in Venezuela seemed to remind him of. His comment is worth a read, so I'm going to leave this here. You can pause the video and read that at your leisure. That'll do it for this week's video. Thank you guys so much for your comments. I truly appreciate them. I love reading your guys' thoughts and your guys' questions and, answering like this, so just keep them coming. Sources for everything is always down in the doobie-doo, as well as links to the Facebook, Twitter, and the blog. Look forward to seeing you guys out there as well. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you consider giving it a thumbs up. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by commenting down below, by sharing this video, by subscribing to the channel, stay in the loop for more awesome social science content uploaded. If you want to be guaranteed to be in the loop when I upload a new video, be sure to click the bell icon as well. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.